Hi, Adele Spraggon here, and this is the Fulfillment Vlog for those who are looking for happiness, peace of mind, and success in today's topsy-turvy, mixed-up world. Let me start with a question. Have you ever had an experience that has radically changed your worldview? Something that altered you the moment it happened? Or maybe, like I was, you are seeking such an experience. My impactful incident happened back in 2010. You might recall that at the time the US was in conflict with Iraq, and it had been a decade since 9/11 and the loss of the Twin Towers. Now, both of these events had left me shocked and shattered. And so for the decade leading up to this incident in 2010, I had doubled down on my efforts to achieve spiritual enlightenment. Now, enlightenment is a Buddhist concept. It can be difficult to translate, but let's just describe it here as liberation from suffering. I wanted this. And so every day I meditated, I did daily yoga, I chanted, I listened to Dharma talks. Then in 2010, the following thing happened to me. I recall I was driving at the time and the radio was on and a soldier was being interviewed. So it turns out that while he was serving in Iraq, he was captured and was held prisoner for years inside a makeshift jail cell, which was really nothing more than a converted shed. So while he was confined in the shed, he would often hear helicopters flying overhead. So one night, when his captors were distracted, he managed to escape. As he escaped, he saw that on the outskirts of this camp, there was this large hill, and so he headed towards that hill. His thought was this: if he could make it to the top of the hill, he would be able to scratch the word help into the ground. And then he thought the helicopter crews would be able to see this call for help, land in the village, and rescue him. So sure enough, he made it to the top of this hill all right. But when he got there, it was pitch black and he couldn't see anything. He tried searching around for a stick, but he wasn't having any luck. And he was just on the verge of panic when he heard a voice. "Go back to the shed and wait. I will bring you help." Now the reporter asked him who had spoken. God, he said. God had told him to go back to the prison and await rescue. Now, what was it about this particular story that radically altered my worldview that day? Maybe it was the metaphor of the hill, the fact that the soldier only heard God's voice when he had ascended that hill. Who knows? All I know is that from that moment on, I had what could best be described as a spiritual crisis. My path changed that very day. I ended my search for enlightenment. I stopped meditating every day. I stopped doing daily yoga. And instead, I actually started down a new path, one that was about to lead me to the creation of the 4-step repatterning technique. I didn't know that at the time. But here's what you need to know about your subconscious. It is the source of wisdom. Intellect comes from the conscious mind. Wisdom is sourced from the subconscious. But here's the problem. The subconscious doesn't speak English, or any other language for that matter. It speaks in emotions and metaphors, and so it can be very difficult to translate. Now that said, you can still consider your conscious mind to be the dumb cousin of your subconscious. And so that day in the car, listening to that story, my subconscious stepped into the driver's seat. It was as if it said, enough. And it caused a complete about-face in me. And, as I said, this needed to happen. As I reflect back now, I see that I was clearly on the wrong path for the future I wanted, because my quest for enlightenment had been based in division. I'd been dividing myself into two camps. Let's call them my human self and my higher self. Not that I did this of my own choosing. I, like everyone else, had been taught to perceive the world in terms of dichotomy. We have all been educated to see things in terms of the opposites and to separate, for example, good from bad, truth from fiction, positive from negative. This is how we have come to accept that some of our emotions are positive emotions and others are negative emotions, or that there are values that are good and other values that are bad. You know, we often hear of growth mindset and fixed mindset, two opposing points of view. And we are taught from birth to judge and reject. Now, one of my spiritual teachers, Yogi Bhajan, once said, the ugliest thing that happened in the last century is that man started finding God outside himself. Now, this was certainly what I was doing pre-2010, and it was reflected in my quest to become enlightened. Is it time for us globally to leave dichotomy behind? I believe it is. The latest findings in neuroscience are truly exciting, and what they demonstrate about our brain invites us to reassess our preconceptions of the world and of humanity. Just a few decades ago, this state that was called Enlightenment, or that is called Enlightenment, was solely a personal and a subjective experience. The great masters described their subjective experience, but without today's modern brain scanners, there was no way to objectively determine what was actually happening in their brain. Today we can. And here's what science now shows us. Your brain is wired for this state called enlightenment. This state is not mystical. It is not spiritual. It is a state that is readily available in your brain. When someone knows even just the fundamentals of how the brain functions and has an effective technique that works in accordance with how that brain functions, your brain readily rewires itself in that direction. When people give their brain this gentle nudge in the direction of enlightenment, they report feeling ease and joy and lightness and the experience of the unfolding of life moment to moment. Their confidence soars as they find themselves calm even in the face of the most challenging of situations. They no longer take anything personally because the emphasis on the self softens. And this has them able to step back and observe different perspectives as they unfold at the same time. And the result of this? Happiness, forgiveness, freedom from suffering. The benefits are enormous. So next week, let's dive a little deeper into how to train your brain for enlightened thought. All right, that's all for this episode. If you've had your own conscious shifting event, I would love to hear about it. Please write it in the comments below or share it in the Facebook group. And if you're ready to get started on your own enlightened path, then you can start with the free training that I'll put the link directly below this video. All right, until next week, I'll see you then.